watching The End Zone, sponsored by Lucky Star Casino.
Welcome to a Winter Wonderland edition of The End Zone, along with my co-host TJ ECKERT. I am Colby Daniels. TJ, it's great to see your face. Normally you're sitting right next to me, but we can still see each other as we get ready for a gigantic weekend of playoff football, right? We're wrapping up the college football playoffs, 3 straight days of wild card weekend in the NFL. It's good to see you.
Yeah, this is a good time of year, right? The postseason football, it means that unfortunately football season's winding down, but this is the best football you're going to get all season long. So it's kind of bittersweet, right? You're happy that this point is here, but you're sad because that means it's coming to an end soon.
That's right. That's right. I heard someone say today this is football weather, which I completely disagree with because I don't know about you. I never liked playing in this type of weather.
No, and I've had this argument before with people. I think I would rather play in snow and rain over wind. That's very much a quarterback speaking, but the snow and the rain is fine because it's predictable. The wind is just brutal because it is unpredictable and it just makes things miserable. So I'd rather play in none of it. I'd rather play in sun, but if I had to choose, it'd probably be the snow and the rain.
Probably just depends where you come from because I grew up in an area where the wind blows all the time, so I guess I'm kind of used to it. So I would probably choose the wind, but yeah, I don't think anybody's going to have to worry about that this weekend in terms of the college game and obviously in the NFL. There will be some places that have the elements as a big factor, Buffalo perhaps, or Baltimore. It's going to be a fun weekend, but let's jump into some OU headlines as we talk about this winter wonderland and things happening locally. The big headline for OU football this week is Kendall Daniels headed to Oklahoma, the Oklahoma State safety who I think we all agree has a gigantic ceiling. It's just a matter of him putting it all together.
Yeah, and Colby, when he started at Beggs, it was the potential that you're talking about, the talent was on full display, right? I mean, he was the best player on the field in every game he played in. He goes to Oklahoma State that first year, and after the red shirt, he appeared to be one of the best players on the defensive side of the ball for Oklahoma State that full season. That's why he was a freshman All-American. You move around coordinators, you move around positions, right? He got moved down into the box at linebacker. They added weight to him. That's a tough transition to make. And so I'll be curious to see what this Oklahoma staff decides to do with Kendall Daniels. I think he's a guy you drop the weight, you put him back in the back end and just kind of let him lurk around. I think that's where he's best. And you're right, the talent and the potential is still there, and he could end up being a really good get for Brent Venables.
He's certainly capable of making splash plays. We'll see if the consistency is there for him to be an every down type of contributor for that defense, but his skill set is going to be utilized within that defense in some way for sure. They also have brought in another tight end, TJ. I guess the model for the tight end position is bring in as many as you can and hopefully one of them works out. John Locke from La Tech joining the Sooners this week.
I think OU fans were able to not find too much to complain about because he didn't come from an FCS or a D2 school, right? He came from Louisiana Tech. It's at least a school people know of, right? But it feels like, I don't know this, I'm making this up, but it feels like you bring in a bunch of guys, spring balls almost like a tryout, figure out which guys are going to fit in your new system, and then allow those guys to have an opportunity to move on if they so choose, right? I mean, you're not going to, there's no way, I don't think, you keep all these guys on the roster. Right. So to me, that's what it looks like. I don't know who's the favorite, but that's kind of what it looks like to me.
Well, speaking of moving on, we've got to hit OU basketball. They had a big matchup with another top 10 team this week in Texas A&M. And I think the thought coming out of this game is deja vu, right? We've seen this so many times with Oklahoma and giving up a game the way they did. Is this going to be an issue for Porter Moser's team?
You were there, and to me, it felt like early in that game, it was a good response from getting blown out by Alabama over the previous weekend, right? So the question about response was kind of out the window to me because they had a good response. And then it's just like it maybe a recurring theme. I don't know. You don't see them get up almost 20 on top 10 teams frequently. You do see them struggle maybe late in games sometimes, but, man, the hope is that it doesn't linger because in the SEC, especially this year, you can't let that happen. Going to Georgia this weekend, obviously, who beat Kentucky. You got another tough slate coming up the week after that. It's just you can't let these losses pile on, because you could stare 3-15 or whatever the number would be in the face in a conference like this if you let that stuff happen.
I will say this about this Sooner team. I feel like the ceiling is much higher for this group than the group a year ago. I do feel like there is a little bit of pressure maybe from this team entering conference play because of what happened after the good start last year and how it just kind of spiraled out of control in conference play. There does feel like there's a little bit of weight on their shoulders, but I feel like their ceiling is much higher than a year ago. In terms of Oklahoma State, I want to get your thoughts on this team because I have a hard time kind of figuring out where to put them if you're going to do like a Big 12 power ranking. I feel like they're capable of maybe good basketball, but I also don't know that I just 100% believe in the consistency.
Yeah, it's not there, right? And, you know, there was a question posed on social media, is OSU going to go winless in Big 12 football and Big 12 basketball? And I think a lot of Kansas State fans jumped in the comments and said, well, you haven't played us yet, and then they played them and beat them. So I think Kansas State probably feels like they're towards the bottom of the league right now, at least at this point. So I'm curious if that win, although good and needed, if that just came against a team that was also struggling coming in. You get to play them on your home floor. At least in the Big 12, typically in years past, and probably what's going to happen this year and what we're going to see in the SEC, you have to find a way to steal road wins. And, you know, you look up and down the slate, where are you going to find one, right? Like going to Morgantown is not easy, and you got blown out there. Where are you going to steal a road win? You got to do it at some point. Maybe it is Utah this weekend. I don't know. But you got to find a way to do it. And I think that will be the mark, Colby, of how good this team can truly be, is if they can go on the road and win one against a team maybe that you're not picking at the higher end of the conference.
That's right. You got to find road wins, but you got to protect your home court, and that's not something that's been a guarantee in Stillwater the last few seasons. So at least they were able to do that against Kansas State. All right, we've got to take a timeout. That's TJ ECKERT. I'm Colby Daniels. Speaking of road wins, there are two road favorites in the NFL this weekend. We'll take a look at the local players that are involved in the NFL playoffs next. Welcome back to the End Zone along with TJ ECKERT. I am Colby Daniels. We have 6 NFL playoff games this weekend, wild card weekend. I am curious to know if we have a bunch of blowouts, if sports fans in general will spit the same sort of venom toward the NFL that they did in college football. You know, there have been some blowout weekends in wild card weekend for the NFL, but we do have some interesting matchups and a lot of local flavor in this year's playoffs. And we'll start with the first game of the doubleheader on Saturday, which is the Chargers at the Texans. Tony Jefferson from Oklahoma playing for the Chargers. Joe Mixon obviously has been a huge get for the Texans offense this season. TJ, what do you think about this matchup?
Hard to believe Tony Jefferson's still playing and playing at a high level, right? I guess playing at a high level was the way I should have said that, right? I feel like he's been in the league forever. Texans were kind of everybody's dark horse coming into the season, and they've kind of fallen off a cliff towards the end of the year. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chargers go and win that, and I don't think anybody else would either.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one, and they are the favorite, and they're playing Jim Harbaugh style of football, so that's one of my more intriguing matchups of Wild Card Weekend. The nightcap on Saturday is the Baltimore Ravens hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 Cowboys in this game: Jaylen Warren, Justice Hill, and Tylan Wallace, and then Mark Andrews, the tight end, the all-pro caliber tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. This is a massive game for really the legacy, I think, of Lamar Jackson, and you could say that about probably this entire postseason run for him.
Yeah, no doubt. The Ravens still kind of looking for that first really big playoff run in this era. Mike Tomlin's still trying to find a way to break out of that, you know, stereotype of his that, you know, he hasn't been able to make a run in the playoffs since winning that Super Bowl. So this is, or making this, whatever. So this is an interesting one. Baltimore, I saw a stat, I'm looking at it now. They've beaten playoff teams by a scoring margin of plus 112 going into the post. That's pretty good. They beat good teams, and they beat them well.
Yeah, can they do it in the postseason, though? That's the big question. We have a triple header on Sunday, TJ, and it starts with the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. And speaking of legacy games, feels like Josh Allen really needs a big postseason, just like Lamar Jackson does. But a big year for some Sooners in Denver. Nick Bonito and Marvin Mims have been fantastic and a big part of that Denver resurgence.
both voted for the Pro Bowl, right? Which is awesome. I mean, good for both of those guys. Really good seasons. Mims has been a big bright spot. Bo Nix is playing great. Sean Payton doing a great job there in Denver as well. That'll be interesting. Obviously, I think Buffalo ends up winning that one, but look out. Sean Payton kind of has a way about him in games like this.
If I'm going to carve out any time to do anything else over the weekend, it's going to be in the afternoon on Sunday, because as a Cowboy fan, I have very little interest in the Packers or the Eagles. But for Oklahoma fans out there, Jalen Hurts and Lane Johnson are representing the Sooners in the afternoon.
Hurts has kind of gotten a bad rep from Eagles fans down the stretch of the season. I mean, not that Philly fans are all that rational, but feels like they're very upset with his play. I know he's been hurt, but he could use a nice little run in the postseason to kind of silence some of those haters, I think.
He had the MVP caliber season a couple years ago, right? So is that the Jalen Hurts that everybody thinks is the real guy, or is it the Jalen Hurts that we've seen the last 2 years? I don't know the answer to that, but Saquon Barkley is clearly what makes that team go. Speaking of former Oklahoma quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, who could probably run for mayor in Norman and win in a landslide, is back in the postseason for the Tampa Bay Bucks.
I think he could run for governor. Is that too high? I think he could win that. I don't know. The guy, man, I'm shocked that people have not necessarily doubted. They have doubted, but I mean, the guy just keeps proving people wrong. Interesting matchup with Washington. Curious to see what Jaden Daniels looks like his first time in the NFL postseason. So that's a fun, intriguing matchup for sure.
And then the Monday night game, we have the Minnesota Vikings at the Rams. Minnesota with 3 Sooners and Neville Gallimore back with the Rams. But this is the other one that I think is really interesting on this weekend in terms of most competitive matchups.
It is, and again, we've talked all about college football playoff, meaning to reseed. I'm not sure what your opinion is on the reseeding for the NFL, but Minnesota had one of the best years in the league, really, and they're having to go on the road for the first round of the playoffs. It's interesting. But yeah, this is a fun one. Sam Darnold, I mean, if he can go on a nice run in the postseason, you got J.J. McCarthy sitting right there. Like, what's Minnesota going to do in the offseason? I don't know.
Should be a fun one. Should be a fun weekend overall in the NFL. And there's your look at some Sooners, Cowboys, and one Tulsa Golden Hurricane and Chris Paul that will be representing the state of Oklahoma in the postseason as we get underway. All right, we're going to put TJ in the hot seat. It's moving the chains next here on the End Zone. All right, it's time for this week's edition of Moving the Chains. That is TJ ECKERT. I am Colby Daniels. I will fire questions at TJ. He starts with 1st and 10. I will grade his answers. He will get positive or negative yardage, and the goal, as always, is to pick up a first down. TJ, as you are well aware, nobody has ever failed to pick up a first down. So no pressure. And I don't know. We'll see how you answer these. And, I am feeling a little bit generous, though, as we head into a big playoff weekend. So there's that. All right. So you were originally going to ask a Mount Rushmore question. So I thought I would spin a Mount Rushmore question this week. Give me your Mount Rushmore of sports broadcasters.
Okay. So let's roll with, I'm just going to probably do a bunch of recent guys. Let's go Stuart Scott, RIP, because the guy's a trailblazer on SportsCenter.
I like it.
Honestly, these are all probably original SportsCenter type guys. Loved Kenny Mayne on SportsCenter back in the day. Thought he was really good. Let's go Scott Van Pelt, because I think he's done enough. He's got his own show named after him now, so I feel like that's a guy that's probably, in a lot of newcomers' minds, deserves a spot. The other one you can get have a little fun with. Let's go with, I want to have a little fun just because I like his style. He just retired. Give me John Anderson. Worked in the Tulsa market and local TV too, which is, you know what, that's a good sign for all of us local sports guys. You can one day make it on SportsCenter if you start in local news like John Anderson did.
Okay. So I think that's a solid list. I like the fact that you kind of stayed in one area and didn't move to different types of broadcasters. I mean, the fact that you left out the Big Show entirely with Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann, which is what skyrocketed Sports Center, and I think was the best era of Sports Center, is a giant miss. But Stuart Scott has a deserving place there, no question. So I'll just say a gain of 1. I'm not going to give you too much because you left off. Like, Dan Patrick has to be on the list. Ooh. So gain of 1.
Fair. That's
second
fair.
and 9. You're going to have to do some work on second down. All right, here we go. Second and 9. We all know that 12 teams is not going to be permanent in the college football playoff. It's going to change. I think we all expect that it's going to be more. But if I threw this at you and said it either has to go to 8 or 16, which way are you going?
I think I would rather go 16 because I like all the extra playoff games. I think that's fun. But the only reason and the only way I would go to 16 is if we got 2 on-campus games for the higher seed, right? Like I like the idea of rewarding a team for having a good regular season, right? So why not give them an opportunity to host games? Logistically might get tough in terms of, schools being able to host on back-to-back weeks, or maybe you give them a week off. I don't know. But I like more playoff games, and I like the idea of having more home games in those playoff games too.
We have more parity in college football than we've ever had, right? None of the top 4 seeds even advanced after their first game, so it's only going to continue with NIL. So I'm with you on 16. Let's go gain of 8 to set up 3rd and 1. So I was originally going to ask this question, but I'm curious to get your answer on this. What was your welcome to college football moment? You played at UCO. I'm sure there had to be a moment, whether it was in a game or at practice, where you were like, whoa, this is different.
So in high school at Bixby, I never got hit, right? As a quarterback, you just don't normally get hit. And you're not supposed to get hit in college either, but my first fall camp practice, I was the scout team quarterback as a true freshman. And like the third play, I dropped back, and one of our really good inside linebackers, Adrian Streetcraft is his name, really good player, just leveled me. Like face mask under the chin, like where there's no protection. Like feet almost came up over my body. It was one of the biggest hits I've ever felt. And it was like, okay, well, I guess I'm allowed to get hit here on this scout team practice. So that was a, hey, rookie, welcome to the league type moment for me.
All right, I'm going to give you the first down, and we'll wrap this up really quickly with another opportunity. How late is too late to take down Christmas decorations? I know I'm stealing this one from you.
It's a great question, and the answer is there is no good answer because mine are still up. So I think that if you go past the end of January, that's probably bad. But right now, it's snowing. Christmas lights look good with the snow on it, right? So I think that's good.
Fair enough. I'm going to give you another first down. We've never taken them down before January ends since my son has been born. We actually got it done last weekend for the first time ever. So 2 first downs for TJ Eckert, and we are wrapping up the show talking Thunder Hoops next here on the End Zone. As we wrap up this edition of the End Zone, we have to talk a little Thunder basketball. The longest win streak in franchise history came to an end this week, TJ. A battle of titans in terms of the overall standings with the Thunder and the Cavs. But, man, this Thunder team has been on such an incredible run. It was going to end at some point, right? And at least it wasn't the lowly Washington Wizards.
Or the Mavericks, like a rival, right? Like it's just the Cavs, so that's okay. I think nobody in America, would be upset if that was your NBA Finals matchup, right? Especially when Chet gets back. I just feel like that's such a great matchup. Wasn't great without Chet because that size for Cleveland was really bothering OKC, but having a guy like Chet can really affect a game in a different way. That was a lot of fun, and I would look forward to seeing that for 7 games if we could. That's the best offense in the league. They were without Alex Caruso, who's one of the best defenders in the league, and Chet's versatility obviously would make a huge difference. That's their second loss since they had Hartenstein added back to the lineup. I just hope we can see this team fully healthy at some point, right? And the good thing about that Cleveland-OKC matchup, and I know that was nationally touted, Cleveland is here on January 16th, so right around the corner when OKC comes back to town, ending this 4-game road trip, they get the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the good thing, too, obviously that's a great – I love that we're getting it again before the postseason would eventually get here, and who knows what would shake out to get to that finals route if that's what happened. But because Oklahoma City's played as well as they have without Chet, and we've talked about this before, you don't have to rush him back if you don't want to. You'd like to get him some run before the postseason gets here, obviously, but there's no reason to bring him back any faster than you want to because you've given yourself such a good cushion with season left.
That's TJ ECKERT. I'm Colby Daniels. Everybody have a great weekend, and we're back next Friday and Saturday.